Good morning. It is September 19th, 2025, and this is the OSU Turf Team Times. We are in a slightly difficult situation as drought conditions continue to pervade for many parts of the state, and rainfall and consistent rainfall have not shown any inclination to turn up. For the northern part of the state next week, there are chances, but that doesn't mean it looks like it's going to fix what we've missed over the last 4 to 5 weeks. Online today, we got Dr. Dave Gardner, we got Pam Sherratt, and we're going to start off with Dr. Gardner. We got a weed update, Dr. Gardner.
Yeah, so I suppose the good news about having a drought at this time of the year, as opposed to in the middle of June, July, is that the angle of the sun's a little lower. So I mean, I've been able to keep things uniformly green. Irrigating once in the afternoon lightly for like 15 minutes. Ed, you need to turn on sharing.
I did.
Okay. So I don't have a lot to talk about when it comes to the control of weeds per se, because between the drought and the calendar date, it's kind of an irrational time to be applying things for most purposes. That said, if you had problems with winter annual weeds last year, this is a good time to be making that application. But that or fertilizer, you probably need to be scheduling those applications so that you do either irrigate or wait for rain to hit that, preferably within 24 to 48 hours. I think there's a perception that when you apply dry materials, that they'll just sit there until the rain activates them. And while that's mostly true, there absolutely are physical and chemical processes that will start to break those products down depending on what they are. And so you might end up with less of it than you thought that you would. And so again, while we're in drought conditions, like this, it's not a great time to be applying most things. Now, a couple of oddball weeds that you see, during drought, depending on the time of the year, is this guy, American burnweed, which, this actually gets 2.5 meters tall and won't survive repeated mowing. But the thing is that on drought stress turf, mostly people aren't mowing. And so this is one that's relatively more resilient in drier conditions. And so it will sprout up and become pretty visible, when we have conditions like this. You can use repeat applications of three-way herbicides or triclopyr, but herbicides can cause damage to drought-stressed turf in some situations. And so honestly, this is one that you just kind of observe. You can pull it if it's a localized infestation, or you can spot treat, but it's one that normally will not survive repeated mowing. I've mentioned this weed before during times of drought, but a new one that's a little bit more interesting, and this all of these images come from Joe Boggs, who's OSU Extension in Cincinnati. You can see the grass here is not happy. It's pretty dormant. But all of those patches of stuff that look like they're not grass, if you look at them up close, it's like they're nice and pretty and bright green. And this particular weed is something that shouldn't persist in turf. And yet we're finding situations where if you mow it, it starts to branch out and form more of a prostrate growth habit. So I guess an analogy would be Johnson grass. So Johnson grass competes with corn, and normally, it doesn't like repeated mowing, but in certain environments, you can find Johnson grass that if you mow it repeatedly at a higher height, like 4 inches, it will persist there for a period of time. But this particular weed is called three-seeded mercury. There's a couple of other common names for it too, but this is a summer annual that will normally get to about 24 inches in height. It's not particularly common in turf. Like yesterday, and actually this week, we were going back and forth with images of this weed trying to figure out what it was, and we needed to have our agricultural weed specialist remind us what this is. And so I started searching for other states where they see this in turf, and Texas was the only one that really pulled up. But this is one that's going to be most visible in drier drought years because, again, usually this is something that should not survive repeat mowing. But the difficult thing about this, though, if you do have one of them that has this prostrate growth habit, and Joe Boggs does inform me that this is actually a significant issue in the Cincinnati area. Folks in the northern part of the state are probably like, yeah, we've never seen that. We're never going to. But in the southern part of the state, this is a significant issue. Well, this is in the same family of plants as prostrate spurge, and prostrate spurge can be annoyingly difficult to control with herbicides. And usually, herbicide specificity is family specific. So if you have a plant that's in a certain family that a herbicide has action against, other weeds in that family will also be susceptible. Well, with prostrate spurge, we've never found anything that works particularly great after the weed has hardened off due to heat and drought stress, kind of like what the situation is now. But here's a picture of, one of these that Joe Boggs pulled out of the ground, and you see the prostrate growth habit, but you also see a taproot. If it's a localized infestation, honestly, your best plan is to just pull it. That's probably going to be the best way to get rid of it, because when I try to control prostrate spurge, for example, again, a related species with most of our finest chemicals, and I do that in a trial. I'll go out 7 days later and look at it, and the first thing that pops into my head was I did remember to mix the herbicide with the water before I treated these plots, right? Again, weeds in this family of plants can be exceedingly difficult to control. But again, three-seeded mercury is what this is called. Regular mowing should remove it, and yet in the Cincinnati area, we're seeing instances where it absolutely is branching out and becoming more prostrate in habit. You can attempt repeat applications of herbicides, but make sure that they're ones that have triclopyr, or preferably triclopyr and dicamba in combination. But again, like I said, probably if it's a localized infestation, your best plan might be to just pull it by hand, because it does have a taproot. And since it is an annual, it is going to set a lot of seed, and you might have a problem with it next year. So other things about that, you can also make sure that your turf stand is dense and vigorous. That will guard against this coming back next year, or reduce the infestation. But the other thing is that this germinates very late. So in areas where you have a big infestation, like that first picture that I showed, you could consider putting out a pre-emergence herbicide. But since this germinates really late, you'd have to put that pre-emergence out much later than you normally would for crabgrass. All right, Ed, that's what I have for today.
But Dave, I noticed you had 258 slides in that presentation before you started it. I thought you had a whole lot more to cover.
Well, I do this for the entire year. So I've got one of these PowerPoints. I'm not necessarily doing the John Street thing. I have one of these for each calendar year. And so I
You took
just
the
stack them
famous
all.
man's name out of my mouth. I said, "Are you going to turn into Dr. John Street?"
Yes,
Pam
not
Sherratt, take it away.
Good morning, everybody. Dave, I have a quick question for you. So, in my yard, and I was actually at Farm Science Review this week, and I had a few people talk to me about they have it also in their yard. Nimblewill seems to have done particularly well this year, with it being a warm season grass. Um, it's still green and it's still actively growing. So, is this a good time, or should they hold off for a week or two? Um, for herbicide efficacy, or what would you recommend for Nimblewill right now?
They could attempt to control it. Honestly, a non-selective herbicide is going to probably be the better option. Some people have reported success with topramazone or mesotrione, but that is not 100% consistent, or it's not as when you use mesotrione to control creeping bent grass selectively, there's a pretty decent chance that you're going to be happy with the results. With Nimblewill and Bermuda grass, those herbicides will have activity. They'll bleach them, but sometimes, depending on the location, the conditions, and honestly, I don't know what else, sometimes you can get fairly good success with attempting to remove those selectively, and other times you're less satisfied with the result. So if they want to just meaningfully be done with it, then probably the best course of action would be to use am I even allowed to say the name of the product? Glypho sounds like hate. I'm just kidding. Glyphosate. Yeah. So, but you'd have to have a lawn care pro do that, since that's not easily available at most retail locations anymore. And unlike that insecticide that got taken off the market in 1978 and people hoarded that in 50-gallon drums for, up to 2 decades, I'm not seeing people hoarding glyphosate in their garages. So again, you probably need a lawn care pro for that.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Gardner. So I was just at Farm Science Review, and things are crispy in central Ohio. Lawns are dormant at best, maybe dead at worst. I know in my particular neighborhood in Clintonville, walking around in the evenings, I see some lawns that I'm not sure are going to recover. It is so dry. So obviously our ultimate time, textbook time to renovate was mid-August to mid-September. We had the driest August on record, according to our state climatologist, Dr. Aaron Wilson. So the driest August on records since records began, I think, in 1894. I think we're probably on track for the same in September. A slight chance of rain, maybe this Monday, Tuesday, but usually in central Ohio, that system gets to our ring road, 270, and then dissipates. So I'm not holding my breath on any type of rain. So what do you do? Because turf grasses are plants, and we cannot renovate these areas and establish without water. And so one of the options might be to dormant seed, to just start to think about having a dormant seed plan. When dormant seeding is putting seed out when we know it won't germinate. You could do it very late fall into winter, or you could wait until January, February next year. January, February next year is generally a good time because the frost heave that we get creates these this open sort of surface. You get these small holes and fissures in the soil surface that the seed can easily drop into. So you could think about dormant seeding. Some of the research over the years has showed that you do get a higher mortality with the seed, so you need to be putting out about 30% more seed. You'll have to time it when you know it won't germinate, and then just hopefully will give you a quicker start in the spring. A couple of other things I wanted to mention. If we don't get frost until the 3rd week of October, which is usually about the time we do in central Ohio, you've still got about 4 weeks to maybe get something established. If we do get some rain, or you can get some irrigation out, the faster growing species like perennial ryegrass, if you're just desperate for ground cover, perennial ryegrass is a good option to just get something out quick, get it up before those frosts. But long term, tall fescue is still the grass that we recommend for home lawns in Ohio. And the reason we say that is because it is the most drought tolerant and heat tolerant of the cool season species. And I can tell you from standing on our tall fescue plots at Farm Science Review this week that it was the only green grass that we had. We have some old plots at Farm Science Review. We have fine fescue, perennial rye, Kentucky blue, tall fescue, and then mixes and blends of those. And the fine fescue had completely checked out, had the ryegrass. The bluegrass was either checked out or dormant and full of weeds. And the only green grass we had out there, which wasn't beautiful, it wasn't Augusta National, but it was green and it was persistent, was tall fescue. So long term, if this is going to be our normal, I think homeowners should seriously look at, tall fescue as the grass of choice that can withstand these types of drought and heat conditions that we're having. If you need something quick, obviously perennial ryegrass is the way to go. If you want to spend your time looking after your lawn and you love your lawn, obviously you stick with, and you can irrigate it, stick with your Kentucky bluegrass. But just some things to think about also, and I think Dr. Nangle mentioned this last week, once temperatures cool down a little bit and we do start to get some more moisture, sod is a great option all the way into the late fall until the ground gets frozen. So sod is also a great option for establishment. I think that's it, other than to say we will be sending out an email to all of the high school and 2-year programs in the state that have horticulture/turf programs. Our student day at OTF this year is different. It will be on Thursday, December the 11th. In the past, it's been on the Wednesday. This year, it's on the Thursday. So we'll have the quiz bowl. We'll have the trade show. We have a very short guest, a very short session guest speaker speaking this year. We've got Weston Applefella coming in, who works for FIFA. He'll be giving the students an update on the men's World Cup soccer, which is coming to North America next year. So it's going to be a great day, but mark your calendars. It will be Thursday, December the 11th this year. And I think that's it. Dr. Nangle, that's all I have.
Thank you, Pamela. Of course, for those of you who are aware, Pamela will be watching the TV screen intently tomorrow as her Everton take on the crosstown rival Liverpool with the usual vitriol that goes with all of that. Come on, the Reds. Oh, Blues. Sorry. I will say from a disease standpoint, folks, we don't have much going on other than if you have a lawn where it has older ryegrass cultivars in it, every time you walk out on it and it's not been irrigated, you will notice that your feet are getting orange. That is rust. It is not napalm. It is not anything else. It is purely the disease rust, and it will not do much in the way of extra damage beyond the drought conditions you already have. However, if it is a frustration to you, the recommendation from us is to look to install or bring in newer cultivars of ryegrass or even tall fescue, as Pam mentioned, because of the fact that they are less susceptible to the problem. However, I can tell you that last week when we had the field day here for the sports field managers, the robot mowers that we had came off the area and they definitely don't control rust. However, they do pick it up every single which way possible. So they turn from a red and white color to an orange color very quickly. From an insect standpoint, Dr. Shetler's not here. Dr. Wu's not here, obviously. But there was a mention of some vagabond armyworms or sod webworms, sorry. But they're not going to do a huge amount of damage. The only thing I have noticed in the Cleveland side of it, and I don't know where you guys and gals are in farther south, is that spotted lanternfly has really started to pick up as far as its prevalence. And so if you see one, squish it. But the sooner we get a hard frost to knock most of that back, that would do a lot of us a lot of favors. Like Pam mentioned, there is rainfall in the forecast. Seems to be slightly higher levels or higher chances in the northern part of the state. So I would try and take advantage of it as much as possible. When we look at drought conditions, and I haven't shared in a while, so I better do this properly. We can see that the state is in a moderate drought for the most part. Other than you got 3 counties where you're getting into extreme drought, which is Carl, Columbiana, and I can't think of the other one, but we are in that situation where most of the state is seeing some type of drought situations. And those problems, Jefferson's the other one. Those problems, folks, are only appearing now because we've had such a hot, wet, humid summer. And particularly for the homeowners who might be watching this, with the professionals who are out seeding your lawns, telling them that it's been raining is probably not something that they're going to agree with. And so let them make the decision on when the best time is going to be for that seeding process if they're going to continue to work on it, because they know it's dry. And you telling them if you've pushed them into seeding a lawn in early September or late August, you tell them that it's been raining and the seed has failed, that's not the case, right? Seeding in these conditions means either you're watering 3 to 5 times a day to get the seed to establish, and based on the fact that Pam told me temperatures in Columbus are probably 90 degrees today, there's still a potential for some damping off disease issues to arise if you don't have fungicides down at this current moment in time. Now, nighttime temperatures have limited that for the most part, but those types of temperatures are still going to be conducive to cause problems. So watering the new seed is still going to be a requirement, and you can't just patience, right? This thing, until we get rain, is not going to suddenly cure itself unless you have the ability to put more and more water down. With that, I will say the only other thing to make mention of is on August 29th, the ATI scholarship outing, Pine Hills and Medina, is still open for players, but we are going to wrap it up. We will be back next week with maybe some better news, hopefully, as we continue through this period of slightly difficult conditions, trying to get everything reestablished. But once we start to see an improvement in conditions, we will go to a bi-weekly review. So with that, we would say thank you, folks. We talk to you all next week.